Hello my grandchildren, this is your old grandpa Trev, and I'm writing this video for you, making this video for you, because I wanted to talk to you about a subject that's really critical right now, and that is climate change. Now, I don't know what you know about climate change, but I talk to a lot of people, including parents, and I know full well that a lot of schools are teaching a lot of stuff about climate change, which is frankly quite scary. I know some young people who think the world is going to end in 3 or 4 years, and the floods are going to be all over the world. The sea level is going to rise by hundreds of metres, and I'm here to tell you that that's not quite right. Is your grandpa qualified to talk about this? Well, I'm certainly as qualified, if not more qualified, than any teacher you'll have. I've spent 15 years in Landcare. Now, Landcare is a real environmental movement. More than 20,000 hours I put into that, and it was all voluntary because I care about the environment. I care about the planet. I care about the planet that we're leaving behind for you. So, yes, I think I have some qualifications. Anyway, I'm going to talk to you about some stuff, and I don't want you to take my word for it either. If any of this interests you, then I'll ask you to do your own research, do a little bit of work, think about it, and see what you come up with, because you're being scared witless. Or maybe you're not, but a lot of people are being scared, and I just don't think it's fair. I really consider myself to be a greenie. So when Al Gore, who was the Vice President of the US, introduced the whole climate change debate some time back, I got quite excited, and I listened to it, and I believed all the prophecies, I believed it all, and I really became a convert to alternate energy. And there's no question that alternate energy, some form of alternate energy or forms of alternate energy are definitely the way to go, and there's no question that mankind has contributed to global warming or climate change or whatever you want to call it. But it isn't as bad as you're being led to believe. It isn't as bad as you're being led to believe because it's being exaggerated. And it's being exaggerated for reasons that have got nothing to do with the environment and all to do with money. Anyway, when Al Gore first brought to attention of the world that we really must do something and get into alternate energies, I was quite excited about that, and I happened to live in Gippsland, and one of the first wind farms in Victoria went up in Tura. The proposition is very appealing. The wind blows and the wind is free. The wind turns things. The wind can turn all sorts of things, including large propellers. That can turn a turbine of any sort, and that turbine can generate electricity. What's not to like about that idea? Nothing, in fact. Same with solar. Solar panels produce electricity from the sun. The sun is free, and the electricity that comes out of it is essentially free. What's not to like about that proposition? So I was excited, and I really got on the Al Gore bandwagon. But then I did a little bit of work and a little bit of thinking, and after a few years I saw some of the holes in it. Now I am campaigning against not green energy, certainly not campaigning against alternate energies because they're a must, but the pace at which it's being done and the fear that they're putting around making the changes quickly is totally and utterly wrong. Even back in 2004, that's a long time in the argument that we're talking about, and certainly before you boys were born, I wrote an article for the magazine, East Coast magazine called Living Now. They asked me to write an article on why I thought wind farms weren't as good as everybody thought they were. I wrote a 1,250-word essay on that, outlining a lot of facts. They also said they were going to publish someone who was giving the counter-argument. I thought that was a great idea. When it was published, the counter-argument was 2 paragraphs long and said nothing other than emotional stuff. So this little video that I'm trying to make for you today, I hope will give you some hope. That's the purpose of it. At least I hope it will make you, if you're interested, I hope it will allay some of your fears, and then you can do some checking on your own. But what I'm hoping to do is to present enough stuff in this video that you won't be as fearful as you might be. And for all I know, you're not fearful at all and don't care. That's okay. But if you are, this video might be useful. The simple truth is the world will not end in a few years, and humanity will not disappear off the planet if we don't get to zero carbon. In fact, if we got to zero carbon, which is actually wrong anyway, it's carbon dioxide, but if we ever got to zero carbon, we'd all be dead, because we require at least 2% carbon dioxide in order for anything to grow. No plants grow. Plants don't grow, animals don't grow, humans are animals, and we're all gone anyway. So zero carbon dioxide is an absolute scientific myth. We are told that carbon dioxide levels are at an all-time high and that man is responsible for this. Is that true? The answer is only partly. Certainly since the Western world industrialised several hundred years ago, we have added to carbon dioxide levels, and that's not a good thing. Is it as bad as we're being led to believe? Well, I'd like to suggest to you that it isn't. Ice cores from the Arctic can measure back millions of years, really, and there are periods in the past, long before man could do anything other than light a fire, and carbon dioxide levels were up at 4%. That's about where they are now. And as they are at 4%, that helps growth. Our crop, worldwide crops, are better than they've ever been. There is no doubt that the climate is changing, and there is absolutely no doubt that man has contributed to that. But is it as bad as you're being led to believe? What you're not told, perhaps, is that every 10 to perhaps 15,000 years, we have an ice age. We're about due for one. This climate change may well be the nexus point for that, and it'll be a long while before it happens. But the climate is changing. We are told that Australia must cut its emissions to next to nothing, to zero, because we need to save the world. Here is a statistic for you. Australia produces 1.25% of world carbon dioxide emissions, or greenhouse gas emissions if you wish to call them that. The biggest polluter on the planet, or the biggest producer of carbon dioxide emissions, is China. You are told, you're going to be told, that we must shut down all our coal-fired power stations, and we're doing that. We're even blowing them up. Cold, wet and hungry, really, because we're not going to have a hell of a lot of energy, or reliable energy, for quite a while. In the meantime, while we're supposedly pulling our power systems apart, China is building 2 new coal-fired power stations. 2 a year? No. 2 every 6 months? No. 2 every month? No. 2 every week. So every week China's putting on 2 more coal-fired power stations, and yet we're going to reduce ours to nothing. Our doing that will make absolute zero difference to the world carbon dioxide, but it'll make a hell of a difference to Australia's living standards, and that's your living standard. So, here we are again, my lovely ones. Different day, different shirt, even changed my undies just for this video. So, and it's almost finished. I'm not going to bore you with too much more, but there's a couple of more things that I do want to say. At the beginning of this video, I mentioned Al Gore, who really started this whole process and runs around the world still today, talking about climate change and the dangers that we're under. He talks about rising sea levels, electricity failure, etc., etc. Have a look at a picture of his beachside house here. Note I said beachside. If Al Gore was really worried about rising sea levels would he have a mansion on the beach? Electricity, his home, that home, uses 21 times more electricity than the average American home. He's one hell of an electricity consumer, but he wants you and me to consume none, or next to none. So, does that sound a tad hypocritical to you? Next, there's Tim Flannery. Here's a picture of Tim Flannery. He's Australia's chief climate change advisor. Way back in 2007, he said this, quote, "Even the rain that falls won't fill our rivers and dams," unquote. Again, even the rain that falls won't fill our rivers and dams. Tell that to the people of New South Wales who've been going through flood after flood, and Victoria, the Murray just finished flooding, and all of our water catchment areas are full to the brim. Is Flannery allowed to make mistakes? Of course he is, but he keeps on making them. He had the government invest an enormous amount of money in a geothermal hot rocks exercise in Central Australia. A great idea, but again, technologically not viable yet. And it's a bit like wind farms. Wind power is terrific, but it actually costs more in energy to produce the turbines than they ever return in energy to you. Likewise, solar panels. Billions of them around the world are going to end up in rubbish dumps or buried in beaches or wherever the hell they are. So there are issues with those, and I address those in other videos, but I'm not going to bore you with those now. Suffice to say that Tim Flannery is still being lauded as an expert, and if he is, he's a hell of a flawed expert. Then there's Greta. Have a look at Greta. That was a picture of Greta haranguing the United Nations. Greta hasn't gone to school, about 12, but she is propped up and running around the world. She believes in what she's doing, but she's being wound up by an enormous number of people. And she's, in all fairness, I can't believe any 13 or 14-year-old boy or girl knows enough to advise on anything to do with such technical and difficult issues such as climate change. But Greta does, and people listen. Surprises me that they listen. Let me finish this little video with some climate change predictions that haven't come true. And I'm only using 3. I could give you dozens, but this video is getting too long and is probably boring already, or might have been boring in the first minute. I'm sorry about that if it was. But here's 3 that haven't come to pass, and there are hundreds more. Let me wrap this up, my lovely grandchildren, by saying just this. There is going to be more and more pressure on you, me, and everyone else over the next 10 to 20 years about climate change. All I urge you to do is not fall for the fear, but actually do some work, or at least do some thinking, or at least whatever you need to do, and check a few things out. Check what I said out, by the way. I might have made mistakes on this video. Everyone makes mistakes. But I'm trying to say it's nowhere near as bad as it looks. It's all about money and not about environment, but I won't bore you with that now. So, this is Grandpa saying bye-bye.